Welcome to the 2018 deliberative session for SAU 93, the Monadnock School District. As we begin the meeting, I'd like to introduce three students. Thomas Poulet from Fitzwilliam, Matthew Kozlowski from Swansea, and Phoebe Devan from Swansea. If you guys would come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, folks. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, you guys ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, guys. Before we start, if you're a non-voter, you should be seated up in the upper right-hand corner. If anyone is a non-voter seated somewhere else, if you could move to that location, we appreciate it. You should all have registered and have a pink card indicating which town you're from. This will become useful if we do a hand vote, which could potentially happen. And you should also have 3 colored slips that would be used if we have opportunity to do a paper ballot. My name is Bill Hutwelker. I have the pleasure of serving on your behalf as your moderator. To the inhabitants of the Cooperative School District in the towns of Fitzwilliam, Gilsum, Richmond, Roxbury, Swansea, and Troy, qualified to vote in the district affairs, you are hereby notified to meet at the Monadnock Regional Middle High School on Saturday, the 3rd day of February 2018 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon for the purpose of hearing an explanation of the following subjects, to carry on any discussion or debate with respect thereto, with said subjects to be open to amendment. I would ask you to pay particular attention to that last clause. All articles that are on the warrant will pass through to the vote in March, as amended or as written. None of the articles can be removed. And for some of you who have town meeting, this is a different format than what you would be used to, but the district is an SB2 town, which is a 2-phase meeting, this one today, and then the next one in March when the actual vote takes place. If there's any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer them. Notice school district officers will be elected at the second session of the annual meeting of the Monadnock Regional School District on March 13th, 2018, in accordance with the statutory election procedures adopted by vote of the district on March 11th, 1996. The school district warrant for the election of school district officials will be held in accordance with revised statutes annotated RSA 40:13 in each of the district's member towns. The polls will be open to voters in their towns of residence on March 13th, 2018 as follows. Fitzwilliam, their town hall from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Gilsum, in the Gilsum Community Center from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. In Richmond, at Veterans Hall from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. In Roxbury, at their meeting house from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And in the midst of that, at 7, they begin their town meeting. Swansea at Christian Life Fellowship Church from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and in Troy at the Samuel E. Paul Community Center from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. I was hopeful that this would be about the extent of the reading that I would do. I will not read the warrant articles. They will be on display here unless somebody objects, but given my voice, I'd appreciate it if nobody does. I did run off 150 copies of the rules of the deliberative session. I suspect we have more than 150 people here, so I will go through those and highlight a couple of the items. If you don't have any of the rules of procedures, one of the assistant moderators will get one for you if we have any left. Do we have any questions? All right, at this point, I'd like to ask Lisa Stedman to introduce herself, and we'll come down through the head table. and then the individual school board members will introduce themselves, and the Budget Committee Chairman, Wayne Lecklider, will introduce the Budget Committee. Lisa?
Good morning. I'm Lisa Stedman, representing the town of Troy, also your school board chair. This morning, our vice chair, Scott Peters, also representing the town of Troy, wasn't able to join us. He gave me permission to explain that that's because his family has the flu, and none of us want it. At this time, I'm going to pass the mic over to the other school board members to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Brian Bohannon, Swansea.
Good morning, Bob Mitchell, board member Swansea.
Eric Stanley, Swansea.
Sherry McDaniel Thomas, Swansea.
Karen Wheeler, Gilsum.
Nick Mosier, Town of Roxbury.
Winston Wright for Town of Fitzwilliam.
Phyllis Peterson, the Town of Fitzwilliam.
Betty Tatro, Swansea.
Keith, could you just introduce yourself?
Assistant Moderator Keith Tebow from Swansea.
Jim O'Shaughnessy, attorney for the school district.
Wayne Lecklider, Chairman from Swansea. I'll announce the Budget Committee members just to speed things along. This is Dan Kaufman, Vice Chairman from Swansea. Wayne Lacoste, Representative from Swansea. Tom Matson, Representative from Troy. Kristen Goodenough, Representative from Swansea. Tom Parker, Representative from Fitzwilliam. Wendy Martell, Representative from Fitzwilliam. Adam Hopkins, Representative from Troy. And Doug Bursaw, Representative from Richmond.
Thank you very much. Lillian reminded me that I forgot to announce that we do have multiple fire exits, 2 here and 2 in the back. Hopefully we don't need them. What else was I supposed to announce, Lillian? Guess that's it. I'm sorry? Oh, cell phones. Since I typically forget to shut mine off, if you have your cell phone on, if you could put it on mute or turn it off for the purpose of for the length of the meeting. We do have opportunity to have some speakers who are not citizens of any of our communities. I do give them the opportunity to speak if they're affiliated with the SAU or their principals in their respective schools. If someone wishes to speak who is a non-resident, to speak to an article who is a non-resident or a non-voter, it will be up to the body to allow that individual to speak. I got to admit, this is an incredible turnout. Last year, what did we have, 100 people? As I asked Ken Colby, I wonder what's behind the screen. There's got to be some reason for everybody to be here. I'd like to introduce our assistant moderators who will be counting should there be need for a standing vote, a hand count, or a paper ballot, or a division. And I suspect, given the number of people, that we will be doing at least a stand count on virtually every amendment. It's a little difficult. There's an echo here to hear whether one side or the other is overwhelming. We have Ken Colby, if you'd raise your hand. Lori Tyler, if you'd stand up and raise your hand. Representative Bruce Tatro. These 3 people will be your assistants. If you have any question and you can't get my attention, please ask for one of them. And excuse me, they'll help you out. The microphones are positioned up front. We had sign-up sheets as you walked in. If you signed up to speak to an article, Keith will call you first. He'll call the first 2 people, and then after the first person speaks, he'll call the 3rd person. If you have not signed up, you're welcome to come to speak to an article. We would just ask that you walk forward, raise your hand, and then come up to speak through the microphone. When you do speak to the body, but at an angle. You can notice they are angled slightly, and that's so you can pay attention to Keith. You will have 3 minutes to speak on your position. He will keep time for you. We can fudge it a little bit if you go a little bit long, but if you go extremely long, I will cut you off. You will have opportunity to come back and speak to the article once everyone else has spoken. Any questions? Sorry, we did have one question with regard to paper ballot. If you wish to have a paper ballot on any article or amendment, I need to have that in writing on a sheet of paper with 5 registered voters, and I will announce that before we take the vote. Are there any questions? All right, I'd like to introduce 2 state reps. If there's others that are here, I'm sorry, I wasn't made aware that you are, but from Swansea and Richmond, Winchester, you'll have to tell the rest of the towns, Bruce. We have Bruce Tatro and Barry Faulkner representing Swansea and Richmond. Are there anyone else here who are state reps? Senator Jay Kahn was scheduled to be here to speak on behalf of some of the legislation he's worked on and sponsored, specifically with regard to education, but due to a family member, he was not able to attend, but he sends his regrets on his behalf. And echoing words I'm sure Lisa will say, we've been very pleased with the support that Senator Kahn has given the district, both in terms of coming to our deliberative session last year, but also in his meetings with individual schools and principals during the course of the year. You have state reps and a state senator who are working very hard on your behalf. At this point, I'd like to ask Lisa Witt to come forward. She's the superintendent for the district, and she'll give you some information regarding what's been happening and introduce some of the key members of her team.
Is this on? Yep. Good morning. Oh, wow, you're right. This is a full house. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out on a Saturday morning to participate in this important process for our district. This is my 3rd year as your superintendent. This is our 3rd deliberative, and this is by far the biggest crowd, so I think that's great. I'd like to take this opportunity to pass this very large microphone through so the members of the administrative team can introduce themselves to you as well.
Jeremy Rathbun, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment.
Dave LaPointe, Director of Facilities.
Good morning, Melissa Suarez, Principal of Mount Caesar School.
Morning, Audrey Salzman, Principal at Cutler School.
Adrienne Noel, Teaching Principal at Gilsum STEAM Academy.
Good morning, Kevin Stone. I'm Principal in Troy and Emerson and Fitzwilliam.
Thank you for all you're doing for our children. Thank you very much.
And that's all I really wanted to say. Again, just thank you all for being here and being a part of this process. If you ever are in the area and want to stop by, have a conversation, please reach out and do so. My door is always open. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to ask all the teachers and paraprofessionals and others who are involved in the education of our children to please stand up and accept our appreciation for your hard work. And all of the parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles of the children who we are serving, please stand up and thank you for your support of our teachers and our staff and your children. And then lastly, everybody else who doesn't have children in the schools but may have had them in the past but is so supportive of our budget, of our programs, and of our facilities through your tax dollars, please rise and accept our appreciation. Thank you. Okay, as we as we begin, again, I remind you, I'm sorry.
People know there's a ton of seats up here.
Okay. I'm sorry, for those of you who are standing, we do have seats up front here. We have plenty of seats here. Looks like there's a body of seats over there, but this is going to be a long meeting. You'll be here for at least an hour, so you may want to come up. I remind you, the people in the back, that's for non-voters, so if you're a voter, please come forward. Elliot, are you going to perform your function this year? Well, you'll get us started. All right. Thank you. Ken, can you help them find some seats? Ken, can you help these guys find some seats? Lori, can you help people find some seats? We have a couple of seats right here.
There's one right up front. It's next to me.
Oh, the power seat.
Let's go. I'd like to make it, yeah. Meant to be out of our range. Million. Yeah, yeah. It's not binding, though. They're thinking we're going to here. Yeah. Instead of probably thinking about it.
It's funding issue.
Seats up here by the budget committee. Keith, you think we're all set?
Yeah.
All right, thanks very much for taking seats. I'd like to remind you this is your meeting. The hosts are the school board and the budget committee, but this is your meeting. We have rules of procedure, but they're held loosely. The main goal is to treat each other with respect. Understand that someone else may have an opinion different than yours. It's just an opinion. No attacks will be accepted, a personal attacks. And if people get out of line in terms of language or demeanor, please understand, with all due respect, I will ask you to sit down. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and again, treat each other with respect. Any questions before we begin? Article number 1 is displayed on the screen. I'd ask someone to move the article. We have a second? Second. Who moved the article? Tom Mattson? You got that, Laura? Okay. Second. Paul Schering? Any discussion on Article 1? Keith, do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, we do. Robert Williams.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry, this is my first article. I'm just getting warmed up. Lisa Stedman, on behalf of the school board, would like to speak to the article.
So I'm going to pass this to Winston Wright. And Winston.
Winston is a school board member from Fitzwilliam.
Yes, Winston Wright from Fitzwilliam.
5 minutes.
I would like to read from your warrant. The school board supports this article. The budget committee supports this article. And for your information, this number is 1.43% less than the operating budget we're working on this year. The administration, the school board, the budget committee have proposed this amount of money to be spent for the coming year and the next year. I ask for your support for this. There's a lot in this budget to make your children have a good education. Thank you.
Thank you, Winston. Wayne, did you want to speak on behalf of the budget committee?
Just to echo Winston and the school board's thoughts, just to give you a dollar amount, this budget is $453,000 less than the current budget that we're operating in this year, so the budget committee supports it.
We have 2 speakers signed up. The first speaker that signed up to speak is Robert Williams from Troy.
Robert, would you like to come up? Robert chooses not to come up.
Okay. Second is Patricia Voorhees from Swansea.
If anyone else would like to speak to Article 1, please come up.
Good morning. It's so wonderful to see a packed house. It really is. I know that most of you are here this morning because you're interested in making sure that your voice is heard for the formula for the taxes. This is a good budget. It should be approved. But in all of these warrant articles, I want to bring to your attention that I have asked for, under the right to know, and I have been denied the tax impact for each one of these warrant articles. So in essence, ladies and gentlemen, you are asked at this moment to take out your checkbook, sign a blank check for each and every one of these warrant articles, and pass it in. You do not know what your tax impact will be. Next year, I have found out that it is possible, only through a petitioned warrant article, to ask the administration to provide that information before we come to the deliberative session. I will be out looking for signatures for that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 1? Yes, sir. We have one gentleman, and then we'll see. Yes, sir. Please come up. Yep.
Need his name in town.
What's that?
Need his name in town.
Yep. Just ask you to give us your name and town, sir.
Yeah, my name is Greg Butko. I live in Richmond. I've got a question. Did you say that the budget, the 32,000 there, 32 million rather, that's 400 and some thousand less than the budget that's currently in operation right now?
That's true.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
That was correct. I don't think anybody heard
Yeah.
Okay.
our response.
Okay. Motion's been made to move the question. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Article 1 will move to the warrant as written. Motion's been made to restrict reconsideration of Article 1. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Yes, sir. If you could come up to the microphone. Could you come up to... Need your name and town.
My name is Herb Drug. I'm from Troy. And I'd like to make a motion to consider Article 8 before Article 2.
There's been a motion made to move Article 8 to second position. We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Article 8 is by petition. Can we bring up Article 8?
Yeah.
Lisa, who's on this? She's working on it. Okay. We're working on getting Article 8 brought up. It'll take just a moment.
Point of order. A question. Since this is a petition article, if it passes, is it enforceable or is it advisory only?
I mean, it depends on what the formula is, and I think we'll end up getting into that discussion, but it would be enforceable if it were a valid amendment to the apportionment formula.
I think the key point there, Elliot, is if it's a legal, if there's a change to this petition, if it's a legal formula. That may be.
Elliot Kaplan Gilson, my sole purpose was to make sure that frequently the warrant articles that are petitioned are advisory only, and if people are going to be voting on this, it needs to be clear whether voting it up or down will make the legal change. Point of information only.
It's our understanding that as the article is written, it is enforceable. If there's an amendment to the article, it will depend on the amendment as to whether it's enforceable. And that would be a legal question. This is an enforceable petition. It's not advisory.
Mr. Moderator, I would ask that the meeting pass over this article till later in the meeting, as there are several dozen voters still in line registering to vote.
Okay. It's the will of the body. All right, would anyone care to speak? Who do we have for Article 8? What's that?
Just to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
See how many people are up there, because if there are 20 or 30 people up there, you might want to wait.
Yeah, okay. Bring them. Go ahead, call them up. I'm saying call them up. Hey, Ken?
We have 5 people on the list to speak. First is Ben Drug from Troy. Okay.
We're willing to amend this motion to allow others to come in and move this down the list. Is that something that we can do?
If you make a motion.
If you want to make a motion. If you would like to make a motion, to move Article 2 back into position, you're welcome to do that. You'd need a second, and you'd need the will of the body.
Second.
Well, we haven't made the motion yet.
Okay, so I make a motion that we put it back in the position that it was originally at due to the line that we have outside.
Well, we have somebody going to give us a count.
Okay. You can just wait.
So your motion is to move Article 8 back to the 8th position and to have us consider Article 2.
That is correct.
Do we have a second? All right, so the motion's been made to return Article 8 to its original position and for us as a body to consider Article 2 in line. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Guess we got that answer. Before you speak, a second. Okay, we have 12 people in line that are registering. I suspect that they'll be here during the course of our discussion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So my name, good turnout by the way. My name is Ben Drug, and I'm a Monadnock Regional School District voter and taxpayer just like everyone else here. I would first like to thank all the district voters that are here today to discuss this article. For those that don't already know, I support this article. I hope the following comments will articulate that support, and on behalf of everyone in the district that supports this 50-50 as well. There are 2 main arguments on what constitutes a fair apportionment formula. One suggests that an equal school tax rate for all property owners in the district is the fairest outcome. The other suggests that an equal cost per pupil from town to town is fairest. In front of me, I have 2 tax bills. One is from Fitzwilliam and one is from Troy. I chose these 2 towns because they have the greatest disparity when it comes to school tax rate in the district, and both towns are likely well represented here today. Each of these properties have an equal assessment of approximately $395,000. The Fitzwilliam resident pays about $4,950 in school tax, while the Troy resident pays $7,400. Remember, tax bills have the final cost to the taxpayer after all grant funds are accounted for. Do these 2 tax bills sound fair? They are not. These 2 taxpayers are in the same district with the same assessment, paying the same district costs, yet one pays 50% more than the other. When posed with this scenario, the cost per student proponent immediately asks, how many students does each town have? Why does that matter when the towns are not paying for the school? The individual district taxpayers are. So why are we even looking at cost per pupil? The simple answer is, we shouldn't be when it comes to the apportionment. The school budget is funded by property taxes, and all property-based taxes are determined using valuations, period. 50-50 gets us very close to fair. Right now, the difference between the highest and the lowest school tax rates in the district is $6.47, with Fitzwilliam being the lowest. If this article passes today, and again in March, the gap between the highest school tax rate and the lowest will shrink to $3.02. Even then, Fitzwilliam will have the lowest tax rate, and that's okay. because it's as close as we can get to fair under the current regulation and without support of the school board. Please vote for this article as written.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Who's next, Pete?
Next up is Greg Butko from Richmond.
Greg Butko from Richmond. I really don't like the idea of course, being in a regional school district, you really have lost local control anyways. But the idea that kind of leveling everybody, it doesn't go well with me. People should be able to choose what they want. This is why I'm kind of, the whole idea of the regional thing is, local control is lost. You know, we've got a group of people that make all the decisions. They determine what's going to be spent, what the programs are. I don't even want to get into this federal mandates because I don't know if any of the teachers here are familiar with the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. I don't know where the federal government gets any authority over education. Maybe one of the teachers here can tell me. But getting back to this here, I don't like the idea of trying to level people. I think people should have more control and more choice. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Robert Young, Fitzwilliam. And then Jim Ruminier from Roxbury after that.
I think that the people in the neutral towns should consider what effect changing the formula would have on the willingness of voters in other towns to support more spending for the school. I'm sure the voters of Fitzwilliam and Troy have pretty much made up their minds, but what happens here is if you make a change to the formula that causes a dramatic increase for people who are typically retirees or that generally don't have as many children, which is certainly the case in Fitzwilliam, you create an anger that manifests itself in people voting down every fair, reasonable budget increase that's requested because they're being asked to pay an amount that they feel is unfair to them and their town, especially given that many of them don't have children or don't even live in the town full-time. So I would urge people to consider not changing the formula because as it stands, the towns are paying basically based on their burden to the school district, which is determined primarily by how many kids they send. So I think in light of that way of looking at things, this is more fair, and most importantly, it will result in a better education for our kids to keep the formula the way it is so that we have a more reasonable process to keep funding the school appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Ruminier, Roxbury. And then Jennifer Sositis from Fitzwilliam is up after Jim.
Thank you very much. According to RSA 4013, state law, petition warrant articles can be amended at deliberative sessions, and that's what my presentation is all about. There are 29 regional cooperative school districts in the state. Their formulae for apportioning costs are all over the lot. I spoke with Ron, the clerk of the Office of School Finance. I said, are there any rules that limit what the relationship, what the formulas can be? And he said, no, it's up to the towns. And so given that, I'm proposing an amendment to Article 8. I'll read that amendment to you, and you can keep your eyes on this and you'll see the differences that I propose. To see if the Monadnock Regional School District will vote to change the formula for apportionment of operational costs from 25% based on equalized valuation and 75% based on average daily membership to 26% based on equalized valuation and 74% based on average daily membership as of July 1, 2017. this is a minor change. Why is it there? Well, the article calls for a change.
Jim, excuse me. Is that a motion that you've made?
I do make a motion to...
Do we have a second for that motion? Okay, we have a motion. Everyone understand the motion? Okay, Jim, could you explain?
The motion is to change the article so that the formula is based 26% on equalized valuation and 74% based on enrollment in the school system. No, you're challenging what the motion is, or you're challenging the merit of it?
All right, so is what's that? Elliot seconded the motion. Is there, oh, I'm sorry, Nick seconded the motion. Is there now an understanding of the motion, because we will be discussing the motion? Before we discuss the motion, I'm going to call on our attorney to give his opinion of the prospective motion.
I've been waiting all fall for this moment, actually for the last 5 years. So with respect to the representation that was made about the ability of the legislative body to change an apportionment formula, and I don't know what representative you spoke to from the Department of Education, but that person was partially correct. What you guys have to understand is that there are two different kinds of cooperative school districts in New Hampshire. There are those that were formed prior to 1963, and there are those that were formed after 1963. You were formed in 1961. So your ability to amend your articles of agreement and your apportionment formula is quite limited under RSA 195.7 and 195.8, and there was a copy of this out there before, but in fact there are only two formulae, or formula, I think formula is the plural, that you can approve today if they're not being offered by the school board with the school board's recommendation. And you actually can't choose any other formula you'd like unless you're a cooperative school district formed after 1963, unless it's a formula offered by the school board with the school board's recommendation. What I can tell you is that's the language in 195.7C. 195.8 says that the adoption of one of the formulas in 195.7(1) A, B, or C. The confusion is you guys did in fact amend your articles of agreement 5 years ago using some other formula that was not offered by the school board and was not recommended by the school board, but was nonetheless passed by petition and sent to the Department of Education. And Troy filed a lawsuit. They were joined by Roxbury, and we had a fun fight at the Supreme Court. And at the end of the day, it was because the lawsuit was filed so late that the court rejected the lawsuit. We never reached the issue of whether it was a proper change to the formula under the laws that apply to cooperatives formed prior to 1963. Right? Isn't that great? Welcome to New Hampshire. So if you pass this formula here tonight to change it to 2674, I'm not sure if that's valid under the law. There is, as a lawyer I say, there is a strong likelihood that it is not the correct process because it will not have been offered by the board with the board's recommendation. And I can almost guarantee that it will result in litigation from one of the towns that would be disenfranchised by that vote. And we would be back in court fighting about it. So I can't tell you whether or not that would be valid or not. That would be if the amendment passes. The 50-50 formula, I might as well just kind of go on and explain. The formula currently proposed, 50-50, is one of the formula that's permitted to be done by petition warrant article without the being offered by the board. 50-50 is allowed, and 100% equalized valuation is also allowed by 195.7. Those two formula are considered the sort of accepted formula without it being a formula that the board has offered and recommended.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I only refer, my information regarding the ability of a deliberative session to amend a petition article comes from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. There's a legal analysis that I have with me. But again, I'm not a lawyer. Again, referencing the official at the Office of School Finance, it's a direct question to him. His answer was it's up to the town. So,
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We're speaking to the motion to change the article from 50-50 to 26%, 74%. Dick, did you care to speak to the amendment?
I'm speaking to the amendment.
Yep.
So I want to speak against the amendment.
Dick, we just need your name.
My name is Richard Thaxton, and I'm a resident of the town of Troy. I'm speaking against the amendment. It is obviously a thinly veiled attempt to undermine the intent of the petition article. I understand why the voters or someone from Roxbury would not like this apportionment, since the original petition article, which changed it to 75-25, came from Roxbury 5 years ago. It provides them with a nice, safe cushion of paying virtually no taxes. Well, that's the truth. By the same token, my point here is I oppose the amendment, and I feel it would be reasonable to let the article as petitioned go through and go to the voters.
Thank you, Dick. Would anyone else care to speak to the amendment? Nick?
My name's Nick Mosier. I'm school board representative from the town of Roxbury. I'm speaking here not as a board member, but as a citizen of Roxbury. Throughout New Hampshire, you certainly see lots of issues like this come up when it comes to how do you fund your school system. And it's even more complex when you have a cooperative school district like our own. I'm not sure where some of the numbers previously came from, where we were talking about the two tax bills that I believe it was a member of citizen of Troy. Yes. Sorry. I'm trying to make it taller. Is this better? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Currently, right now, we've had a couple towns that have left our school district, as many of you know. And we have all sorts of different plans that towns are looking at right now for what they're going to do moving forward. Right now in Roxbury, we pay, I believe it's $16,000 per student. If the Monadnock Regional School District was going to have some other students come in from another town, we only charge them $15,000. So right now we have a member town that's paying more per student than if we weren't even in the district. And so what do you think is going to happen for towns that are like that? The proposed change right here is going to boost us up to over $20,000 a student. So what incentive does Roxbury really have to stay in the district? And if Roxbury leaves, what do you think that's going to do to the tax base? Nothing. So we currently pay in it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're very small. We have about 120 households. It's a very small town. Okay, so if we have to spread a few $100,000 over the top of it, you're going to see taxes go up in Swansea. You're going to see taxes go up in Troy. You're going to see taxes go up everywhere. Fitzwilliam is in a similar position. They're paying a tremendous amount per student, and for these towns that are paying that amount, other options become much more palatable to us, and that's the reality of the situation. So we can put this forward and change the tax rates again, and some of the member towns can pay $20,000 a student, and other member towns can pay $5,000 or $6,000 a student. But that's going to drive some other changes, and we don't want to see those changes come to fruition.
Thank you, Nick. Would anyone else care to speak to the amendment? Ben, to the amendment?
I'd like to speak to it.
I would like to speak to it and add on to what Nick just said.
You've been waiting.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm a citizen of Roxbury.
Need your name and...
My name is Greg Amend. I'm a citizen of Roxbury. I'm also a New Hampshire teacher, and I'm also a father. So I have a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old son. I wholeheartedly believe in education. I believe education can shape who we are, it can shape our towns, and make us better people. But adding on to what Nick said, and I have never met Nick, I came here today to talk about pure pupil expenditures. When as a citizen of Roxbury, I look at Article 8 with or without the amendment that was just proposed, and I see that we could be looking at $20,000 per pupil expenditure for our tax rate, I have an issue with that. I know that there's SB 193, the school voucher system, though controversial, is out there, that maybe can add or alleviate some of our tax burden if, as a town, we were to decide to leave the district. An example of pure pupil expenditures in our area is the Waldorf School. To enroll an elementary student is $13,000 a year. Whereas with this article, or even with amendment, we're looking at $19,000 to $20,000 per student as citizens of Roxbury. Thank you.
My name is Michael Walsh. I'm from Troy. And as the attorney spoke, he mentioned that if an amendment passes, it may render this article null and void, of no effect. That's why moving 1% is a torpedo. It's a sabotage of this amendment. And I'm urging you all not to fall for that ruse. It's a parliamentarian device, and it will render this article null and void. So why do that? Only to sabotage it.
Marcia Camden from Fitzwilliam. I have a question on this. It says,
If you could tell us exactly what you're questioning, ma'am.
I'm going to. If a cooperative school district.
Which RSA are you questioning?
Section 195.7.
Thank you.
If a cooperative school district was organized prior to July 1st, 1963, during the first 5 years after the formation of the district, these rules apply.
So you have to read 195.7 and 195.8 together. 195.7 is the initial formation formula. 195.8 is the process for changing the formula. And if you look halfway down, it says, if the apportionment formula has been duly changed, right in the middle, the basis for the apportionment of all such costs may be subject to review pursuant to an article for that purpose duly inserted in the warrant for a district meeting to be held at any time after the expiration of the 5-year period, and that can be either after the initial 5-year or any other 5-year period, measured from the date of the meeting at which the last change was made to the cost apportionment formula. In either case, the cooperative school district may then, by a majority vote, elect to apportion all such costs by the adoption of one of the formulas set forth back in 195.7.1, Part A, B, or C. So it really loops you back into 195.7 and the formulas in 195.7 whenever you're changing your formula to a new formula.
As an addition to that, does that mean that if no change is made to the formula, we'd have to address this again next year?
Yeah, if you don't change the formula, then you can do it again next year. If you change the formula by 1%, if it were to be valid, then you would have to wait 5 years to change it again.
Thank you.
Would anyone else care to speak to the article, I mean, to the amendment? Ben?
Ben Drug again. I'd just like to address 3 different items here. The first one that was mentioned was the threat of passing this the way that it is written might suggest that those taxpayers that are negatively affected won't vote for, say, the $1.4 million project that's going to be happening next door, or any other or our operating budget as it stands. The same can be said for those residents that are going to benefit from it. We have 1,150 voters in Troy that, with some more money in their pocket, would be more likely to vote for various budget items for the school district. So that's my argument against that. I already spoke to the per student cost fallacy. I think that's made pretty clear. Additionally, the threat from Roxbury to leave the district, while we never wished for something like that to happen, their contribution is currently around $500,000, which is about 1.5% of our operating budget. That percentage is quite a bit lower when you consider any costs that we do from a capital improvement standpoint. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
I just want a point of clarification. There's no threat from any town to leave the district. It's individuals speaking. Could we leave that dialogue for another day?
Yep.
Anyone
Thank
else
you.
care to speak? Yes, Paul.
Paul Shearing, North Swansea. Our lawyer, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, seemed to be pretty clear that the state law allows only certain divisions between student population and assessed value. The amendment isn't included among them. And I believe he is correct that there will be litigation. And guess who's going to pay for that?
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else care to speak to the amendment? Yes, sir.
Good morning again. I'm going to just try to talk louder because it's a little difficult for me to bend over in the mic and I start feeling nervous. I just want to clarify, as a citizen of Roxbury, I do not want to leave the district. I want to pay an equal share. I have no issue with increasing teachers' salary, with funding other programs, with increasing pre-K in the district. But what I don't want to feel like is that my town and my family are paying $20,000 per student when other areas or other households are not. And I do think that there can be a compromise. It's not a threat to leave, but as someone who has to make a living as well, I have to consider what's the best for my town and for my children when it comes to how much we're paying into education. And I think that's a fair conversation to have. It's not a threat to leave in any way, but we should be having dialogue on that and how can we be equal in terms of how much we're paying per student as all of our towns combine into our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here. Wait, Tom. Jim, were you going to speak? Go ahead, Tom.
All right, Tom Matson, Troy. Question for Mr. O'Shaughnessy. Did I hear you right in saying that if this does not pass, we can revisit it next year?
So are we talking, I mean, I think we're talking about the amendment?
No, the Warren article. Oh, we're on the amendment.
Well, I can answer both questions. So if the amendment doesn't pass and the current language doesn't pass, then you can revisit next year because there will have been no change to the apportionment formula.
And if the amendment doesn't pass, this goes on as written, and it doesn't pass the vote, can it be revisited?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, you'll be revisiting it next year, I imagine.
Okay, so I'd like to address the revisit next year issue because, and I don't like.
Tom, for our purposes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're at the amendment. Jim, did you want to speak to the amendment? Anyone else care to speak to the amendment? You have someone, Jim, were you going to speak to the amendment?
I'm sorry. However this turns out, I want it to be known that this, I'm sorry? However this turns out, I want it to be known that this proposal was not cast as subterfuge or a ruse. That assumes that I already knew what the lawyer, how he interpreted the law, which I was not privy to his calculations, his interpretation. So there is a good faith effort here to recognize how we our 6 towns can work together under a funding system that is at heart flawed. So how can we achieve a measure of fairness within that system? And we have heard that there are various ways to define fairness. I can tell you that in the community where I live, where census figures show there's not huge amounts of income compared to other towns, that the idea of paying 2 or 3 times more per student to attend the same school strikes us as unfair. The recognition here is that indeed there are differences within the communities, because the different communities have different numbers of students who go there and different valuations of their property. The movement to propose the minor change that we made that is in the amendment, again, is not a ruse. It was a recognition that some change has got to be made based on the language of the article. So we would prefer that it be as little as possible. Thank you.
We have a motion to move the question. Do we have a second? Okay, that means all discussion will cease. We had no one else who had indicated they wished to speak. Whew, what do you think? Voice vote? Yeah. All right, we'll try it. So we're on the amendment, and the amendment is to change the proposed formulation to 26% based on equalized valuation and 74% based on average daily membership. Everyone understand we're voting on the amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Wow, we figured that one out, didn't we?
One more person.
Okay. All right.
On the original.
So the amendment fails. So we're back on the original petition article as written. We have one person on the sign up, and I know we have an individual to my right who cares to speak to the original petition article. Come on up. Go ahead, Keith.
Jennifer Societis.
John, you want to go to that microphone?
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? All right. My name is Jennifer Societis. I'm a resident of Fitzwilliam, New Hampshire. First of all, I want to thank everybody for putting this together today. I know this is a lot of people, which is awesome, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I want to start by saying I haven't grown up in New Hampshire. I grew up in Connecticut, and my husband grew up in Massachusetts, but we chose to move to Fitzwilliam for a reason. We love the community. The sense of community is overwhelming, and I think it's one of the things that helps our region grow and thrive. And debates over formula funding like this that happen year after year, I think chips away at that sense of community a little bit. Because I've only lived here for 9 years, this is only my second time being a part of these conversations. And I really don't want to do it a third time, at least not like this. Everyone's looking for what they perceive to be fair, and I think we can do that. But I think we can do better than individual town petitions to change the funding formula. I think we can do a lot better. I think that we, as a community, as a district as a whole, can come together and have full, public, open debates on this issue that involve representatives from every town, that involve measuring the impact of any changes to funding formula in every town before we put it on a ballot to vote. And I think that we can do that with the support of the school board even, if we were given the amount of time. So even with this, I know that this petition is going to end up on the ballot in some form or another, whether it's amended or whether it stays at the 50-50 the way it's worded. And personally, I would encourage everybody to vote no in March, because if it passes, we have to wait 5 years. And I think we can do better, and I think we can do it sooner. I think we can vote no on this article in March, and I think we can form a committee, and for the next year, work together, measure those tax impacts, listen to the towns and find out what are the mitigating factors, what's limiting them, how can they help us pay, how can everybody come together and pay as fair as possible. A little bit. There's a little bit. A little namaste in there. Again, I encourage everybody to vote no in March, regardless of the wording. I'm happily volunteering to be a part of that committee. And maybe if we do this, we can even forge a path for other school districts in New Hampshire on how they look at their funding formulas. So, thank you.
Thank you. John?
My name is John Tomala from Fitzwilliam. Glad to be here today. What a crowd. What I want to talk about is fairness. Over the last 20 years and so forth, time has tested. The town of Troy has not succeeded to change the funding formula that is needed to fund our schools. Even though they have the lowest cost per student, their formula change targets Richmond, Gilsum, Roxbury, and mostly Fitzwilliam, and raises their cost estimates and these numbers need to be fine-tuned, but that'll raise Richmond $23,000, Gilsum $77,000, Roxbury $85,000, the town of Fitzwilliam $706,000. Excuse me, I'm all thumbs, so a little nervous, as you probably can tell. An example, assessments, in the light of fairness, an example, assessments for real estate are not the same for every town because some people use different assessing agencies and they use different formulas and different methods, so they're not equal. State aid does not come entirely from the state, which a lot of people think that, you know, we're going to get this money from the state. If you look at your tax bill, a portion of your tax bill goes to the state of New Hampshire, and that is part of your state aid. Is this fair? I don't think so. Many in Fitzwilliam and other towns are living on fixed incomes and cannot afford to change. I'm all thumbs. Gee whiz. Okay, do we really want to burden this increase on these towns of Gilsum, Roxbury, Fitzwilliam, and so forth? I think the most fair formula change that would be, I think, acceptable to everybody would be 100% on the average daily membership. That way, everybody pays the same per students, and it takes away from pitting town after town as we have seen in the past.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Susan Silverman, Fitzwilliam. I want to sort of resonate with the last two speakers. I've been a selectman in the town of Fitzwilliam for too many years to count, and all three of my children went through the Monadnock Regional School District and did very well by it. None of them live in this area because they can't afford to live in my town. So I just want to say that just because it looks like Fitzwilliam has more resources, I see on a regular basis as on the Board of Selectmen that there are people in my town who really struggle to pay their taxes, whether they're on a fixed income, as John Tomlin is suggesting, or they have been in their house for a long time and it has increased in value, but their wages have not. And I'm one of those people. And you know, we try to, be balanced about how we take people's cases, case by case, but this is an impact that will hurt Fitzwilliam a lot. I see that, it will mean that people won't choose to move there. And so I want you to think about the fairness of it. I also want to say that, we're talking about, the RSAs and things like that. Now, I feel that we would do better if we would pull together, like the other speaker said, I can't remember her name. We need to confront the state. This is a problem that is going to come up every 5 years or every year because the state of New Hampshire has burdened the towns and property tax bills with funding education. And it does pit town against town. This is exactly the problem. And I really feel that we would be much better off if Troy and Fitzwilliam would get together, the two ends of the scale, and go to the state of New Hampshire and say, you need to fix this. It's ridiculous that we pay a state tax and that comes back to us in different apportionments to try and make up for the difference in equalized evaluation. Property tax is an inherently regressive tax. It is not based on your ability to pay, it is based on what you own. And sometimes what you own is not necessarily have any relationship to your income or your ability to pay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Donna Luopa, and I'm from the town of Troy. And I just kind of have a comment about fairness. I don't even have children in school. My kids only went to Monadnock for 3 years. I do, however, have friends and relatives that are in all the towns. And I think we all are just really looking for fairness. So when I hear other towns saying, well, my taxes are going to go up because, we want an equal, because we want a 50-50, I understand where they're coming from, but I would like people to understand where people of Troy are coming from. We pay a lot of money, and a lot of us don't have children in school.
Thank you.
Tom Mattson, Town of Troy. I'm going to vote for the 50-50 because it's in my best interest. I do not believe the 50-50 is in the best interest of the district. I don't believe it is fair. It doesn't address fair. And I feel awful bad for the people of Fitzwilliam because I remember when the Troy ambulance got shut down because it was mismanaged. And the people from Fitzwilliam and their ambulance crew, without being asked, came over and worked tirelessly and got our ambulance up and running within like 90 days. So thank you very much. If I understand the lawyer correctly, if this article fails, as written, we can revisit it next year. Now, we also know that the school board has heard from many people that they should have taken a leadership position and done the work on finding out a formula. Thanks to the people in Troy for starting this process and really looking at the numbers. And if you followed the Facebook post, it was quite exciting. But somebody did come up. I predicted it would be a 60-40 split that would make the delta between the towns shrink. It turns out it appears to be a 56-44 split, and that brings the delta between the towns to about 2%. Okay, so the difference in the towns are evened out. We never had a chance to explore that type of formula and to do what the woman from Fitzwilliam said, because that's what we asked the school board to do, to take responsibility and find out what a fair formula would be. Now, in the meantime, we don't have a business manager, so we don't have access to the same information that we used to have. But I would propose to everyone in this room to leave the article as it is, to vote your conscience on it. And if it does not pass, the school board, maybe we should have a motion to instruct the school board, if Article 8 does not pass, that they will propose next year an article that is fair within the RSAs, and bring us to a closer delta, because this whole thing was rushed. Okay, it's like people forgot for 4.5 years that this was coming up, But if we would have worked on it all year, we would have arrived at a formula that we could have been proud of, that included some thought into the capital expenses, and 15 seconds. So all I'm saying is, let's vote our conscience on this, and if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, we got another shot. Thank you.
Just a quick few points to make. The board actually did look at, and we had a number of discussions over the past few months on this topic. And what it typically boils down to is that you have towns that have significant differences, and the representatives of those towns on the board don't come to a cohesive agreement on what to put here. And that's why the board has taken no position on this article. I'm sorry?
I'll let them out and get some people that can work.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Dick, you have the floor.
I'd be very happy to have more people to come and participate in those discussions. I think we've had probably 6, 7, 8 meetings over the course of 3 or 4 months on this throughout the fall and early winter. But the 2 points that I wanted to come up and make were that if we weren't a cooperative district, the standard that you use is ADM. It's how many students do you have? That's the method by which you pay. So if we have students here that we can't offer the services that they require, and we need to send them out of the district, we pay by student. It is in other towns. So right now we're in a situation where a number of towns are essentially supporting other towns, and that's a problem when it comes to paying your bills at the end of the day, paying your taxes. I looked at the last census data. I think it was from like 2014 for average household income. So that's the money that's coming in, whether you're retired, whether you're a young family, and the only significant difference was Gilsum. They're down in the 40s for average household income. Everybody else in the district is within, I believe, it's $7,000 per household. So I believe the average is around $55,000 for a household in our district, in our towns. So when you have one town where the people are bringing in $55,000 into their household, and you have another town that's bringing in, say, $58,000, but one town is paying 3 to 4 times the cost per student, that's a significant impact on those families. So those are the points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Susan?
Susan Silverman, Fitzwilliam. There's something else I forgot to mention. As you all probably know, your tax bill is made up of 4 different components. The school portion, usually the largest, the town, the county, and by the way, Cheshire County decided to increase their budget dramatically for this next year, and then the state tax, as I mentioned before. And I'm not sure, with all due respect to Mr. Drugg's testimony before, I'm not sure when he read those tax bills if he was just reading the school portion of the bill or the entire tax bill, because I think you have to look at that. I can tell you that for the town of Fitzwilliam, our departments have essentially been flat funded for the last 5 years to try and ease the burden on our taxpayers because the school portion is so high. Now with the county going up, we're facing that again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Hello, again. Greg Amen from Roxbury. I just wanted to talk about a couple of counterpoints that were brought up in this conversation, and I do appreciate the conversation and everyone sharing at this point. One of the ones that were most troubling in terms of voting on this article was a citizen from Troy mentioned that they don't have students in the school system. And as a teacher and as a parent, I find that concerning because I know that the school system is a pay-it-forward system, that we pay into it to make our lives and our futures better for our kids, for our communities, and ourselves. So whatever you get from today's conversation, please do not turn it into, I don't want to pay taxes, I don't want to support schools because I don't have kids in them. We all benefit from schools, and that's important to take away from this.
Good morning. My name is Henry Sokol. I'm a citizen of Troy, and I hate speaking in public, so excuse my shaky voice. I came here not really knowing what to expect, but I just wanted to offer a different opinion. The formula, whether it passes or not, chances are it's going to be either challenged next year or it's going to be challenged in 5 years. And we are all going to be in the same spot. I would like to suggest that we listen to the lady from Fitzwilliam, who suggested forming a committee and making comprehensive change that every town can benefit from, instead of voting on a rushed article. So personally, and this is not a popularity contest, I will abstain from voting on this today or in March because it feels rushed. I also wanted to say that we have very, very expensive education in New Hampshire, and it is funded unfairly by property taxes, which we will not resolve here. But it is something that, you know, we should petition the state to look into, because there are retirees, there are people who lose income that can no longer afford living in their houses. And so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Tom Matson, Town of Troy. I'd like to offer an amendment to the article. I would like to amend the article to say that if this article fails, the school board is directed to provide a formula the following year.
We have a motion on the floor.
Question. Since I know that you cannot obligate an incoming school board to financial considerations and spending of money, can you obligate an incoming school board for various things such as this? Can you tell them what to do though they haven't been elected yet? Plus, this is also financial. Can you obligate the school board to do that?
Before the attorney answers the question, do we have a second? Okay, we're open for discussion.
I mean, I don't know. This is a really close one. So what I'll say is that at the very least, Tom's motion, and if it passes, if that amended language passes and is approved, is a reflection of what the voters want the board to do. And if I'm a board member, I do what the voters have asked me to do. What I can say is I've sat here now for a lot of years and watched you guys struggle with this, and went through the 60-year history of the district and how many times you've struggled with your apportionment formula. And I see every year that you come forward with petition warrant articles instead of actually going through the process of studying what kind of formula makes sense for all of the communities. So I think it's a good idea, and I've been talking to the board about it. It's just very hard to get that thing started, to form a committee to study the apportionment formulas and to come forward, if not next year, then the year after, with some kind of a proposal that the committee and the board feel reflects the best interests of the district as a whole. I can tell you I've worked on these committees before. Other districts have done these types of committees, and Monadnock needs to do it. Because this approach is not working for you guys. So the amended language I don't think is technically binding, but I think it sends a clear message, and the board, I would think, would probably take the charge and take its job seriously.
Dick?
Richard Thaxton, Troy. I'm speaking against Tom's amendment, not because I disagree with it in principle. I think in principle it's a good idea. I think it really would benefit all of us. And I think, as the earlier woman from Fitzwilliam said, maybe we ought to all sit down in a room and come up with a plan that we can all agree on and brings us within 2 or 3%. However, this particular amendment to this article I disagree with for 2 reasons. Number one, I think it goes to the issue of materially amending a petition article, which could ultimately render if this article passed, could render it invalid. And number two, I think it's an issue that's important enough that whether this article passes with the voters in March or not is an issue that should be either taken up by the school board or petitioned to the school board, instructing the school board to take this issue up and come up with a more equitable apportionment schedule so that the next time this can be amended, we have all come to agreement on what the plan really is. So for that reason, for those two reasons, I am opposed to Tom's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Phyllis? Phyllis, did you want to speak to the amendment? To the amendment.
Phyllis Peterson from Fitzwilliam. We are the second highest cost per pupil, Roxbury being the first. I keep saying, and I know all of us here as property owners, none of us think our taxes are fair. It all burdens the property owner. There's a lot of people, we send their kids to school and they're not paying what you pay. We do need to work together. And I think our selectmen and our school board should work together, a special committee, to derive at something that is fair. This formula, 50-50, is really going to hurt Fitzwilliam. And I don't know how we can keep up with the increase of school taxes. I know our selectmen have done as much as they can to keep the costs down, just like the other towns have tried to do. But this isn't working, and pitting this town against town, this is not healthy. This is not good for any of us. And if one of us pull out, like Sullivan did and Surrey did, we picked up that burden. They no longer contributed. And eventually, if people keep saying, I can't afford this, we need to look at something else. It's going to hurt everybody in this room. It is. And I think we're all intelligent enough, and yeah, there may be a few winners this time, but I think eventually there'll be a lot more losers. And is it going to be expensive to leave the district? Probably. But to continue this and to see our taxes go up over $700,000 is really unfair to Fitzwilliam. Thank you.
Just a moment. Before we continue, Attorney Shaughnessy has a clarification of the motion that he would like to propose, I mean, the amendment that he would like to propose.
I hesitate to do this because I don't want to, exert any sort of influence on you folks, but I also watch you struggle with what the right language ought to be and what you're actually striving to accomplish without creating confusion. So something like, this is what I was thinking, language to amend at the end, which is similar to what Troy said, but to direct the school board to form a committee to study the apportionment formula regardless of whether the article passes or fails, and to bring forth the formula to the voters. It's up to you guys, but that's, I think, what you really want to do is tell them to go out and study this and come back with some information. And maybe Tom's gets you there, but that's I think, clear for you folks. And I don't think that would invalidate the vote if it were to pass with a 50-50. I don't think that amendment would invalidate it. You'd still have passed the formula. It would just create another process.
Tom, is that language acceptable to you?
Yes.
To those who made the second, is that language acceptable?
Yes.
Is anybody who seconded disagree with that language? Okay, then that's the language that we're now working with.
Okay, I'd like to speak to the amendment. I agree with Mr. Thaxton that the amendment should not be added because it places the article in jeopardy once again. If you amend it so much as one comma or period, you divorce it from the petition from which it has arisen. It may well be determined to be null and void. I think we should resist that. Let's vote on it the way it is.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Could you explain to me why you're saying that the article could be determined null and void, and who would make that determination?
Well, when you change something, you've divorced it from the process from which it has arisen. And so it becomes kind of, excuse the language, kind of a bastard provision. So That's what I see it as.
What I'm asking is what entity would declare it null and void?
A court someday, if it goes to litigation.
The body has the opportunity to amend the intent of an article as long as it does not substantially change the subject of the article. In my opinion, this amendment does not change the subject.
Well, I would say at best, the amendment is it's exhortive. It's kind of encouraging somebody to do something. It has no lawful effect. It's a frill, it's a bell or a whistle that's not needed, and it poses a danger. So that's my argument for that.
I would disagree in the same vein as Attorney Shaughnessy. Listening to the mood, the mood is that this group chooses not to revisit this year after year or every 5 years, and the intent is to collaborate to come up with a formula that will be acceptable by the majority so that we're not facing that. So I respectfully disagree.
Okay. So we do disagree.
Susan, you want to move? So I have a motion to move the question. We have. All right. I'm going to allow these 5 people to speak, and then we'll move the question.
I'll be quick. Susan Silverman, Fitzwilliam. I just want to say that I have a concern about if we are amending it to include a committee, I would request that the committee be fair and balanced between the different towns in the district, no matter the size, no matter the tax bill, because right now the school board has a weighted vote, and I've seen them last fall arguing about this very issue and unable to set aside their town interests. Thank you.
Paul Schering, North Swansea. My concern with this amendment, and the reason I'm going to vote against it, is that it de-incentivizes people to vote for the original petition article, for or against the petition article. It's kicking the can down the road. We watch Congress do this every 90 days. We don't need to do it in this district.
Hi, Wendy Martell from the town of Fitzwilliam. It's been nice hearing what people have to say about working as a community and not being divisive with one another, which in some ways I think I appreciate it, but I think that this is what this causes. In terms of the amendment, I share the concern of Susan. With all respect to the school board, I think they're struggling to address some of the things that we're dealing with now in terms of long-term planning for our district. I don't know that I have confidence that they're going to be able to address this issue, nor do I feel, because of the weighted balance, that it's something that should happen with the school board. I think some of this needs to go back to the communities. By sheer numbers of people, if just a fraction of the people who are here today would volunteer to be part of a committee to review this, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Wendy.
Ben Drug, Troy. So I'm speaking against this amendment. It doesn't sound like it's legally binding on the school board anyway. I think it muddies the waters and it's completely unnecessary. If you want your school board to act more on this, reach out to them and encourage them to do so. If they're unwilling to, create a petition article that's instructive next year to tell them to deal with this directly. I don't think putting it in here is helping the situation. It's only muddying the waters. Please don't vote to change this article in any way.
Okay, we are voting on the amendment as read by Attorney Shaughnessy and agreed to by Tom Mattson, the original. Any discussion? Any question?
So it would be, and further, to direct the school board to form a committee to study the apportionment formula, regardless of whether this article passes or fails, and to bring forward the formula to the legislative body.
Everyone understand that's what we're voting on? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Boy, I guess we know where this one's going. Opposed? No. Noes have it. So we're back to the original question. We have a motion to move the question. Do we have a second? All right, so the motion has been made to move the question. That ceases deliberation. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Article 8 will go, Article 8 move to position number 2 shall move to the warrant as written. Thank you very much. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 8 now 2. We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 3. I'm sorry, the original Article 2. School Board member Brian Bohannon will speak to Article 2. We're going to have to wait. We have a question from the floor, which I will answer after a 5-minute break to allow people to leave. There seemed to be some question with regard to how we concluded the discussion on Article 8, which was moved to Article 2. I thought I had covered that at the very beginning when we went through the header on the warrant. Articles as written or as amended are not voted up or down at this meeting. Articles as written or as amended, once the question is moved, seconded, and voted on, go directly to the warrant. We don't actually take a vote. Maybe I could have made it clearer is that the school district is an SB2 type of ballot, which is the deliberative session today, and then our actual town meeting is the vote in March. Many of your towns are town meeting format, so you're accustomed to voting yay or nay on an article once you have the final wording. But in SB2, once we have the final wording and once the question is moved, all debate ceases and it moves directly to the ballot. So if you're here and you're concerned about Article 8 moved to Article 2 for purposes of our meeting, that decision has been made. There was a motion to restrict reconsideration, which was approved. There will be no further discussion today with regard to Article 8, which was moved to Article 2. Anyone else, any question on that? And I apologize for the confusion. All right, moving on to Article 2. Brian, are you ready to speak to Article 2?
I am, sir. Thank you.
Before you do, I forgot to reopen the deliberative session. Thank you, Brian.
First, I want to thank those that are still in attendance for staying. You see Article 2 up on the screen. This is the third part of a 3-phase renovation project, and in line with our facilities improvement plan. It was on the warrant last year and narrowly missed. We have significant issues, and if you are looking for some information, building assessments are currently posted on the school district website. This is the only one as it stands right now that has a firm plan in place. You see up on the screen as well, the board, both the school board and the budget committee supports this, and I ask for your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Keith, do you have anybody who cares to speak to Article 2?
The only person signed up to speak is Patricia Borries from Swansea.
Those that are remaining in the audience, I thank you for staying. There are many articles that will be proposed on your March 13th ballot that you need to understand and make an informed decision on. One of those articles is the $1.4 million for the renovations and removal of the so-called trailers at the Mount Caesar School. This is the second year that this warrant article has been proposed. Again, I want to state that I asked for what the tax impact would be for all the towns and was denied that. There will be a warrant article next year proposed to make sure that you are informed what it's going to cost you. This warrant article And some of you will sit and say, we need to improve our schools. And yes, we do. And I'm all for improving our schools. But let me just state a few facts. There was a long-range ad hoc committee formed to make some of these decisions, which kind of filtered out and dissolved itself with no real decisions made. There is no approved and signed by the school board 5 or 6 year capital improvement plan on any of the schools in our district. There has been a Turner Engineering report done, which the school board has not yet addressed all of the schools and what the priorities should be. I am not in favor of this warrant article as proposed because we don't know what the top priority should be and we do not have a plan. The school board has not put forth what they intend to do with either combining schools, closing schools, adding on to schools, building new schools, or renovating schools. There is no plan. That being said, our schools need to go forward, and the public has always approved the health and safety issues in our schools. On this proposed warrant article, there will be no reimbursement from the state as you received on all 6 years of the renovations to the middle high school. So instead of 54% coming back from the state, you are picking up 100% of the $1.4 million. You do not know what the tax impact will be. I move to change that number to $700,000, and we'll readdress it again next year to continue, hopefully after there is a capital improvement plan for all of the schools in the district. Do I have a second?
We have a motion on the floor to amend the article from 1.4 million to 700,000. That's what we'll be discussing. Would anyone care to speak to the motion? Nick, are you speaking as a school board member?
Nick Mosier, I'm speaking as a resident of Roxbury. We have administration that looks at all the needs of our buildings. It's what they do on a full-time basis, some of them on a full-time basis. And this is a vote that was held last year on the same article. Was it 12 votes? 17. So 17 votes it failed by. I believe it was predominantly the town of Troy that really impacted that vote. This is a, well, it's the truth.
Well, let's we're quiet over here. Go ahead, keep going, Nick. Let's leave it alone.
So in Roxbury, we don't even have a school. We don't have infrastructure in our town that we send our kids to. We've had, speaking as a resident of Roxbury, we've had lots of different discussions on different ways that we can move forward with our infrastructure. You know, people talking about proposing a new school, $30 or $40 million. I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the near future when we're trying to push forward basic improvements to our school buildings. Just about everybody here has benefited from going to a public school, I'm assuming. Some may be very fortunate to go to a private school. We need to provide basic facilities where we don't have trailers that we're putting the kids in that we're meant to only be around for 20 years or so, that have long been, excuse me?
You're all set. Keep going, Nick.
So we have a lot of these temporary buildings over at this school. It's also going to be addressing some other issues related to asbestos removal from what I understand. The school board has received engineering reports on all these buildings and have an understanding, administration has an understanding of the improvements that are necessary to keep our school buildings up. And I think we should, I say it every year, we should at least take care of what we have if we're not going to go out and build something new, or there isn't some grand cohesive plan between the towns to address this. And I support this.
Nick, just, are you supporting, we're discussing the amendment. Are you supporting the amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I do not support the amendment. Sorry.
Thank you. Paul?
If we support this amendment, if the amendment was, the article is amended and passes, does anybody really believe that if we spend $700,000 now, that we'll only spend $700,000 more later? Think about that.
Okay, Wayne Lecklider, on behalf of the Budget Committee.
I just want to say that the Budget Committee supported this unanimously, I believe, and it's the right thing to do it, it's the right time to do it, and it's long overdue, so.
Just point, you're supporting the amendment?
I do not support the amendment, I support the original article.
Thank you. Steve?
Steve Biddle, Swansea. I'm against this, or I'm for cutting it back. Actually, I intend on voting against the article, whatever the dollar amount. And for two reasons. And I consider them both failures of the administration and the board. One, we are, as taxpayers, as Mrs. Borey said, entitled to know what the tax impact of $1.4 million is. And I consider it inexcusable that we do not. The town of Swansea provides it to our taxpayers, and somehow the school district considers themselves just above it. The second reason is when Swansea started coming up with ideas as to capital needs, we were criticized by some of the people in this room for not having a full-out plan under a capital budget process, which by the state runs 6 years, and being able to come to the taxpayers and tell them what specifically our needs are, not some reference that, oh, the board knows, but you don't know. What the specific capital requirements are for 6 years out. That's the best practice in the state, and I consider it a deficiency that the school district does not provide it to us taxpayers. I want to know what those costs are going out each year. Without that, coming and asking for this is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Fiddle, and I'm used to talking to preschools, kindergarten, and first grade. So
Which town are you from,
I'm a little
Stephanie?
nervous. I'm sorry, what?
Which town are you
I'm from Swansea. So I grew up in Swansea. My former name is Nicoforakis, so I've been here forever. I have a parent, and I'm also new to the Monadnock district as a teacher in preschool. And I actually live in what we call the ghetto. This is this article to do the trailers. We call them the ghetto. Since I've started working, I have very bad allergies, and they have gotten so much worse working in that end of the building. So that's kind of one of the things I wanted to say. It's been there for so long, I can't even remember. I went to that school. Those trailers were there. And I think where they said the school board supports this article, and as the other gentleman had mentioned, they look at all of the schools and say, which schools do we think need certain things at which time? I think it's a health risk, a health hazard. We have mice and rodent coming all in because there's no insulation. It can get really, really hot or really, really cold, so we crank the heat up if it's cold. It's not efficient. So I think not doing an amendment and leaving it this way is beneficial to our health and to our children. So,
Thank you, Stephanie.
Kim Tomer, whoops, a little shorter than everyone else. Kim Tomer, I'm a Swansea resident. I also teach in the Red Portables. 10 years ago, we had air conditioners installed in all of the classrooms because the air quality was so poor. Those same air conditioners are still in our classrooms. I invite any taxpayer, before you make a decision on voting day about what to do with the portables, whether to, go for 1.4 or 700,000, please come and visit our portion of the building. We have lichen growing out of the wall on my part of the building. If you look at the flashing on any part of that building, it is rotting. The wood is rotting underneath the metal flashing. On any given day that I walk by in the spring when there aren't snowbanks covering it, you can see the rotting wood falling on the ground under the sides of our building. It's not that we want to have the Taj Mahal of that end of the building. It's down to literally, will that building fall apart around the students that we have in that section of the building? I understand that it's a tax burden, but I'm really concerned for the safety of your neighbors' children, grandchildren that are in that part of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Dan?
My name is Dan Kaufman from Swansea. I would like to urge the body to vote against this amendment. Firstly, it's irresponsible, and really that should be it, really. That should be just it. But I'll go on and try to explain why I am committed to that statement. We have an administrative team that put together a budget for the repairs required for the facility to $1.4 million. Generally speaking, especially this man right here, does a killer job managing these projects with his team. We get contractors to do amazing things in a very short period of time. With $700,000, I don't know what the heck he would do. I would say let's not even start. And then we'd be sitting here saying, what do we do with $700,000? So I think it's just egregiously irresponsible, extremely the wrong direction. So one, I would urge the body to vote against the amendment. Two, I would also urge the body to be in support of this article. And if you're a Swansea townsperson like I am, I urge you to grab your neighbors and come out in March, because that did not happen this past March, and we really got off track with the improvement cycle that we've had for that building. Okay, whether there's a plan or not, or whether there's a 10-year forecast or not, that building is in disrepair and it needs to be fixed, and we're all old enough and growing up enough and responsible enough to know it. It's time, so let's make that happen, please. I would urge you today, on this day, and in March, most importantly, to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Hello, I am Bradley Luopa from Troy, New Hampshire. I have a quick question from the budget community.
Wayne.
I have a quick question for you. This 1.4 million, or whatever the amended is, I think there's some misconceptions over it. This is just dedicated for business maintenance, right?
No, Dave can speak to this better, Dave LaPointe, but it's for the complete reconstruction of the red buildings across the street at Mount Caesar.
So the complete, so it's just for the reconstruction of those buildings, correct?
The demolition and reconstruction in the exact same footprint of those red Texture 111 buildings across the street.
So that means it's not going to go to anything else?
Correct.
Okay, that's all that I wanted to clear up.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Dave, just go ahead and explain so everyone understands the scope of the project.
As we explained last year, we all know the red trailers, we call them over here, the wood structures. They're long overdue. The process is to take down those structures. There will be a little bit of change to the layout of that building when it's squared off a little bit more. Make the rooms like they're supposed to be, and that's what we're going to do. So there'll be new buildings in place of those over there. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks again for those that stayed. So my name is Wayne Lacoste, Swansea resident, taxpayer, parent, and school budget committee member. The buildings across the street, from the research that I've been given, were constructed or erected in the 80s as a 5-year plan. Okay, we're well beyond that now. The buildings are falling apart. There is rodent infestation. There are children in the winter that are wearing their coats in the classroom. It's hot in the summer. What this man and his team has done and other improvements in the past few years has, from an energy savings and efficiency perspective, returned our monies back to us. We need to look at where we're putting our children. My children no longer go there, but did, okay? We need to look at where we're putting our children every day and ask ourselves, do you want your kids there? And if you don't have kids, would you want your house to have these conditions? Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone else?
Tom Mattson, Troy. So I'm being asked to decide whether or not I want to raise $1.4 million or $700,000 for this project. And we've heard that nobody can give a tax impact statement, but we haven't asked for one. So I'm going to ask of the school board chairman and of the superintendent, what's the tax impact of this article? And I'd like it to go in the record because I think it's a height of irresponsibility not to know what the tax impact is for $1.4 million worth of construction. So can I have the tax impact, please?
We do not have that information.
Can I have that, make sure that goes in the record, that's it. Thank you.
Pat?
In making the amendment to this article, what I'm trying to do is to ensure that the work will be done over at the Mount Caesar School. If it takes a 2-year warrant article, then so be it. But I don't believe that without a tax impact information on all of these warrant articles, that this particular warrant article is going to have an opportunity to pass. So if you decide, and you must vote your conscience, if you decide that you want this to go forward, I recommend that you do it in 2 years, one for $700,000 and one for $700 plus whatever else the economy says we need in the second year. But I don't believe that all of the towns are going to approve a $1.4 million plus all of the contracts that are out plus the budget. And I don't think that you've got a chance of having this pass the way it is. That is the reason that I proposed the $700,000.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, ma'am.
Erin White from the town of Troy. I would not support the amendment. And in looking at Article 2, I think we all need to reflect, for whatever your reason is here. We have a number of senior citizens who I know are concerned with being on a fixed income and looking at the tax impact. We all are as taxpayers. We have a number of parents, staff members who are concerned for safety and health concerns. I get it all. But without looking at doing this, you wouldn't live in a home that had a leak through its roof year in, year out, and put the bucket under it and keep emptying it. You would fix your roof. You need to do the same to our schools. But I also challenge both taxpayers, the board, and the budget committee to be a little more forward-thinking. We've sat here every year since I've been in the district and talked about the same things over and over. And I know it's not a great topic. It's not well received to think about the reality going forward, that we may need to look at how long some of these schools are going to exist. We need to look at the future, not continuing to put a Band-Aid on an infected wound. Let's start to actually, maybe the board could put something out with a survey to all stakeholders within the district, whether that's taxpayers, employees, parents, go to everyone and say, What is it that you want to see happen in this district in 5 years, in 10 years? And we need to start really looking at the future instead of every year coming back and saying, okay, this school needs it now, this school needs it next. Because in reality, it shouldn't be an article that we get to vote on. It should just be in the budget. If a school is not safe for children and employees to go to every day, then find the dang money.
Thank you. We had one person that was on the way up. We have a motion to move the question. We'll take that after. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, I'm Mike Hebert, taxpayer, Swansea. I'm not in favor of this amendment. It makes absolutely no sense if a project costs $1.4 million to then turn around and say, we're only going to give you $700,000 to tear down these trailers. What would you propose you do with the students to an incomplete building? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to move the question. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, the vote is on the article as amended to 700,000. Everyone understand that? All those in favor of the amendment of 700,000 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, noes have it. We're back to the original article. Would anyone care to speak to the original article of 1.4 million? All done? Betty, did you want it? Phyllis? No? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Hi, DJ Labar, Town of Troy. Very nervous. Thanks for all showing up today. I don't really have an issue with the article presented today. I do believe the schools need to be fixed up. What I don't understand as a district and everybody getting together is why do we let that go for so long? All of a sudden, we need $1.4 million to fix up our schools. Why couldn't we have budgeted this out 25 years ago? Okay, we need appropriations for $45,000. One of these buildings needs to be rehauled. You know, we just wait and we bicker, and we're at 1.4 million now. It's just crazy. It's mind-boggling to me why we just can't do this year after year after year. Set appropriations aside to renovate the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak to the article? We have a motion to call the question. We have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Article 2 as written will go. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 2 will go to the ballot as written. Article 3.
4.
I'm sorry, 4. No, what? 3.
Sorry.
Jeepers, Keith. Phyllis Peterson from Fitzwilliam will speak to this.
Phyllis Peterson. I'm here to recommend that we pass this article as it is written. These are projects that are necessary for 5 out of the 6 buildings, as reported by our facilities director, Dave LaPointe. So I hope that you will support it. The school board supports it, and the budget committee supports it. Thank you.
As Mrs. Peterson said, the Budget Committee supports this. This was typically called our health and safety article over the years, so it's necessary improvements to the individual schools.
Tom?
Tom Mattson, Town of Troy. It looks to me like you left something out of this, and that is a response to the Turner report, which is the engineering study that we paid as taxpayers that makes recommendations of what needs to be fixed in the schools. And on the Turner report for Troy School, it calls for replacing the windows between $220,000 and $300,000. So I'd like to make an amendment that we add the sum of $250,000 for new windows at Troy School.
Okay, we have a motion to increase the article to $460,000. Do we have a second? We have a second. So we'll now be discussing the amendment to the article. Would anyone care to speak to the amendment? No one wants to speak to it? All right. We have a motion to move the question. We have a second? Second. So there's no further discussion. Everyone understand that the motion is to increase the article by $250,000, making the total expenditure $460,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Noes have it. We're back. So the amendment fails. We're back to the original article. Anyone care to speak to the original article? Do we have anybody?
Yeah. The only one that signed up was Patricia Voorhees.
Did you care to speak to it, Pat?
This legislative body seems to be consistently inconsistent. You don't know what the tax base is for 1.4 million, but you vote down an amendment to help one of the schools that needs new windows for $250,000. Go figure.
Thank you, Pat. Tom?
I'd like to make an amendment to add the following sums. $25,000 for repair a slate roof, $40,000 to repair the roofing on the north side of the gymnasium.
Excuse me, Tom, what are we speaking of?
Of repairs to Troy School. The following: 25 grand for a slate roof repair. That's not much. 40 grand to replace the roofing. We're up to 65. 35 grand to replace rotted section of roof cornice. That's about 100. And repoint brickwork at the chimney for 20 grand. I'd like to get those accomplished, please. Thank you.
The total is 120,000.
120,000?
Yep.
120,000, please.
So we have a motion and a second, and where do those estimates come from?
The Turner engineering report.
Okay, everyone understand the motion? I mean, the amendment? Yep. Winston?
Is there a motion on the floor?
There's a proposed amendment to increase this article from 210,000 to 330,000.
Yes, I would say that you should vote that down. These are estimated numbers in those reports. They're not engineering work. They're not, the plan has not been put together how to use these reports that we're getting on every single school building. That, to me, was the start of our future plan. I know the roof leaks, and if we have to do it, then do it. But to put it onto this article, am I correct, Dave, that this is the final asbestos recovery of the buildings?
What was that again? I didn't quite understand it.
Go ahead. Would you restate?
When could you say that again, please?
Yeah, I understand that with the asbestos portions of this completes our most, that we found, the asbestos conditions in the buildings.
This article right here with the asbestos, that would take care of most of what you have in Monadnock. You still have flooring. We just try to do like 6 to 8 rooms a year within a budget plan. And that would be another probably 6 or 8 if we can do it over at Mount Caesar. We never do it during the construction time because it takes too much time and it slows us down. We'll never finish a job. So behind the construction, we come back and do the abatement. Okay? That would clear this school, probably about 99%, as far as I know, flooring-wise. It's probably around 50% if we get those 8 rooms done. Maybe 30. You still would have a whole other wing over there at Mount Caesar to do. So it would not be complete.
It will not complete the whole system, but it
Not the
will
whole
complete
school
the high
district, no.
But I heard you say it will complete the high school?
Yes, the flooring at the high school would be pretty well
We
completed.
need to do that. Now, as far as the Troy roof goes, Dave has been to us several times. He did not call it an emergency.
No, it's not an emergency.
So I say we wait until we get the plan together so we can see what the actual cost is to the whole district. And if I remember, there is no 5-year plan. There never was a 5-year plan or a 6-year plan. The school board never voted to those plans. They just happened. And they worked well.
Thank you, Winston. Tom?
In reply to Winston, you know, we're being asked to vote $1.4 million without knowing how that's going to work. But, you know, maybe they're not emergencies. They were identified by a consultant that we asked to come in and make recommendations to the school district. You know, it's like when you go to the garage and you ask them, are my brakes going to last till the next inspection? Yeah, maybe. It's not an emergency yet, you know, but these are identifiable items that we need to start getting to work on. And I think $130,000, along with, I mean, let's keep in mind, every year we've had a $1 million or $1.5 million surplus. So there is extra money if we don't budget enough. But let's get moving on these projects. Troy School needs attention. This is the second year in a row you sunk money into Mount Caesar. You can't keep ignoring the other schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, ma'am.
I need more legs or less mic. Thanks. Carrie Matson, Troy. I'm up here because I'm a little upset, not about figures. I don't understand them. We're hearing from all these parents about their kids being unsafe and the rodents and the rats and first of all, my kid wouldn't be in that school. He'd be homeschooled. But it comes to Troy, and this is not the first year I sat through it. It seems like I'm always hearing from people saying, well, we're going to have to shut down Troy because, you know, we don't take care of our school. And if it were only that easy that we all could take care of our own schools, it would be wonderful. But taking care of our schools and our children's safety is put in the hands of a few people. And then seeming which way the wind blows is the way the money is spent. And when I heard the word emergency, it almost blew me out of my chair. 15 years ago or so, we were told we had a furnace problem, serious furnace problem at Troy School, but it wasn't an emergency. Thank goodness my husband was on the fire department, and he went to the state about this little non-emergency problem that there are children on a 3rd floor over there. And the state's reply was, the money, either they find a place for the money and the work is done immediately, or they close the school down because the furnace could blow up at any time.
You just speak into the mic, man.
I'm sorry. I'm so scared. Have mercy.
You're doing a fine job.
But I'm just tired, and the talk between Troy and Fitzwilliam and this last lot of other talk has come up on Facebook. The plan seemed to be that the Troy kids will be bused off to Fitzwilliam. It's been said no, but I know it was recommended by Dave LaPointe 2 years ago, and because he was upset because someone said, oh, he was favoring Fitzwilliam, and he said, no, I'm a Troy resident. But the whole thing was, it was a recommendation to send our kids. And I just feel like we are getting nothing so that this recommendation works out. But in the meantime, I hope and pray that on your conscience, if something happens to any of those kids over there, you're the one that has to sleep with your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else care to speak to the amendment? Okay, a motion to move the question and a seconded? Second. So what we're voting on is the amendment to increase the appropriation from $210,000 to $330,000. Everyone understand that? Yes, ma'am. No, you just get the vote here.
Oh, I was curious, because he gave lists, is that
Just the big number. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Ooh, what do you think? No? We have everyone, I'm going to do yeah, we're going to do hands. So if everyone in favor, actually, we'll do a stand-up. Everybody needs a little exercise. Everybody in favor, please stand. Assistant moderators, you got to show your pink card. In the middle?
That I did not count because she's sitting in the middle.
Right up straddling the line. Okay, I got it. Okay. $53. Oh,
54.
that's all over here, right?
And this.
Combined?
You know what? In the middle total, 24
You had 24.
Okay, can you guys figure this out? One of you take that one, one of you take this one. Keith, you want to work with this one? Okay, if you're seated on the right, you can sit down, everybody over here. Those in the center can sit down. Okay, those opposed, please stand and hold up your cards. Good decision. Those in the middle can sit down.
Can I make a motion that the dump stay open longer?
I gotta leave here at 2.
Are you serious?
Yeah, include them. 19. You got Doug? You got Doug? Did you vote?
You can't count that high.
I had to take my shoes off and then I ran out.
Those on the right, you can sit down. Okay.
26.
26. Okay, so we got 41. Holy cow.
Been beeping me and calling me today to apply.
Well, it was a close vote. The total vote was 143. Yeses 76, noes 67. So the yeses have it. So the article has been amended to $330,000. Any further discussion on the article? Yes, ma'am? We'll get there.
I don't think we voted on the article yet, have we?
No,
Okay.
I voted against the amendment only, not because I'm opposed to fixing these schools. I am in favor of fixing the schools. My name is Karen Craig. I'm from Fitzwilliam. But we have a lot of schools in need of help, and we are without a plan. And I echo what Pat Borey said earlier and others. We need a plan. I don't understand why we're not thinking forward. It sounds like we'd almost bop up and say, Emerson needs that, Troy needs this. I'm worried about Cutler and Troy, frankly. But I really think we need a plan. So if we could all use our voices to say to the school board and to whoever needs to be involved, we need a plan. We need to know that we're not just putting a Band-Aid on here and there. What is the plan?
Thank you, Karen. Stephanie?
Hi. There's kind of been a trend in this district of voting and for voters where we put sometimes too much into one thing and then our prices go up 120,000. I don't know where that money is going from because that's not what the budget committee supported or the school board. So now you want to raise it. Where is that money going to come out of? Something else that is needed.
No, it's taxation.
Oh, sorry. But to me, if I look at that and we're having discussions about windows versus asbestos, if this gets voted down, that means the asbestos doesn't get changed in those schools, but we get new windows. And I've worked in Troy. I used to do it in Title I. Do we need it? Of course we need new windows. Of course we need a new roof. But asbestos versus a new roof, if they thought it was going to cave in, they wouldn't have the students there. So like David Point said, it's not an emergency dire thing. I get it. I've worked in Troy, and things do need to be done in every building, but I think asbestos is a little bit higher up there. So
Thank you,
I
Stephanie.
don't agree for the amendment.
Karen?
I just need a clarification, because the school board and the budget committee supported the article as was written. So does that language stay there?
No, they each, well, it could, Karen, it could. They each have meetings scheduled afterwards, I believe. So they'll make a decision on that. It'll show up on the actual warrant.
I knew that answer, but I didn't think the body did.
Okay. Nick?
Nick Mosier from the town of Roxbury. I voted in favor of this amendment. I'd be happy to fix up everything that needs to be fixed up at the schools. But I just want to make sure that we have the language. I heard that we changed the number, but is this the language?
Yeah, repair work at Troy.
And you're okay with that, Tom?
Okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
I trust Dave.
We keep hearing the words, not an emergency. Well, neither was Mount Caesar until it became one. This is pay me now or pay me more later.
We have a motion. Do we need to change that language?
Pat Borey, Swansea.
For the,
In consideration of this, you may not understand that this is adding on to this warrant article for needed projects in Troy. The original article calls for a partial roof at Gilsum for $35,000, a high school abatement for $30,000, abatement at Mount Caesar School, 6 to 8 rooms, $80,000, abatement at Cutler for $10,000, Fitzwilliam Well to be worked on for $15,000, and Mount Caesar bathroom renovations for $40,000. So the only school that wasn't included in this article was Troy. So Mr. Mattson added $25,000, $40,000 for a slate roof, $35,000 I think for windows, and $20,000 for repointing the brick. And that brings the article to $330,000 for health and safety issues, and I approve it.
Thank you, Pat. Bruce?
Thank you. Bruce Tatro from Swansea. And I'd like to, since this has been raised as much, if the author of the amendment or someone here, to quote a famous Swansea resident, what's the tax impact of adding all of this stuff?
Thank you, Bruce. Kristen.
Kristen Goodenow, Swansea Budget Committee member. So I think, and I'd like to ask legal counsel, I think even though you say you want that money allocated for these things, I don't think that just because it's in the warrant article for this wording, that it is a guarantee that that's where that money is going to go to for those repairs. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear about that.
So to be very clear, that money, if they were to spend it, would have to be spent according to the language in the warrant article. But that doesn't mean the board has to spend it on the language in the warrant article, because that's up to the governing body to determine how they spend the money. However, they can't transfer it for other purposes because it's in a special warrant article. So you might not get all the projects done the way you've dictated, but they can't spend it on something else.
Then based on that, and I haven't had a chance to ask Jim this question, it seems to me that before we call the question, we should add the wording that this additional funding is intended for the Troy School and for the 4 projects. It is up there? Oh, wow. Look at that. Lisa, it's amazing. You told me it would happen. I didn't believe you. Great. All right. So anyway, so that language is there. Forget my comment. We have a motion to call the question. Do we have a second? All right, so by calling the question, we're going to take a vote on it as I take that back. We've already voted on it. So the question's been called, debate ceased, the article goes to the warrant as amended. Thank you. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 4. Betty Tatro from the school board in Swansea will speak to Article 4.
There's no one.
Okay.
Hi, folks. This article, you're probably wondering, why is it only $1? A number of years ago, the district established this special education expendable trust. And every year, we've been putting in $50,000. And it's there so that if we had some real big expense in special education, we'd have this fund we could go to. The fund is now at between $350,000 and $360,000. So we didn't feel we needed to add to it, but in order to keep it open so that we could withdraw from it, we had to put in some money, so we put in $1.
Thank you, Betty. Anyone care to discuss the article? We have a motion to move the question. Second. And we have a second. That ceases debate. Article 4 will go to the warrant as written. Article 5. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 5. Cheryl McDaniel Thomas will speak to this.
The current specialist contract ends in June of 2018, this June. School board representatives and the specialists negotiated a new agreement. It includes wage increases to allow the district to compete for specialists. They have a very specialized license, and it is sometimes difficult to find these people. We also changed the insurance driver and increased the employees' participation rate. I think the work between the two groups, the board and the specialist, was really effective, and I hope that you can support this article.
Wayne, did you want to speak to it?
No, I will only speak to this as far as the budget committee is concerned. This was a small group of people, and it seemed as though it was a reasonable ask. Shake my hand.
Okay. Keith?
We have one person signed up to speak, Pamela O'Connor from Swansea.
Thank you. You took a little bit of my speech away. I'm Pam O'Connor. I am from Swansea. I'm a speech pathologist. I work over at Mount Caesar School. I've been there for 26 years. And I am here today representing the specialists of the Monadnock School District. Just wanted to let you know a tiny bit about who we are and what we do. And we are, of course, respectfully asking for your vote of yes on Article 5 on March 13th. We, the specialists of the Monadnock District, work in every Monadnock District school. We consist of psychologists, occupational therapists, and speech pathologists. These professionals have advanced degrees and extensive specialized training, and we support achievement in all areas of our students' lives. We help students with various special needs to improve their cognitive, physical, communication, and motor skills. These children range in age from 3 years to 21 years. For example, we work with students who have sensory and attention issues to improve focus and learning skills. We help students with behavioral disorders and effectively integrate them into the schools and into their communities. We teach children how to make sounds, how to combine words into sentences so that they can express their thoughts, their wants, their needs, so that other people can understand them. We also assess and evaluate students throughout the school year so that parents, administrators, teachers, and healthcare providers have the information they need to help every child succeed. The specialists are involved with early identification and early interventions, which improve outcomes for children and are also cost-effective methods of supporting student achievement. It is a great benefit to the district to employ specialists directly instead of paying private agencies for these professional services, many of which are required by law. Using the credentials of the professionals in the specialist group, the Monadnock Regional School District is able to bill our services through Medicaid. Last year, this group was responsible for bringing in $288,000 to the district. The specialists of the Monadnock District and the school board voted unanimously to support this contract, and the budget committee also voted to support this contract. So we sincerely thank all of you for your support. This contract is a fair contract. It demonstrates fiscal responsibility to you, the taxpayers, and we thank you so much for listening to us, and again, we ask for your yes vote on Article 5 on March 13th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erin White, Town of Troy. I just wanted to show my support to Article 5, but also to publicly praise this group who, again, as has already been said, it was not a big ask. This was a great negotiation, and this to me is a no-brainer to pass. But I wanted to publicly acknowledge, for those that don't know, what this group has done in the last year in terms of raising funds for equipment for special needs children in this district that wouldn't otherwise be covered. They also just recently, this past week, did a raffle on their own, in their own time, that raised about $1,000, give or take, I believe. And the proceeds will be put into a fund to be available to families of children with special needs in the district who have equipment needs that are not typically covered by their insurance or the school system. These are good people, folks. Vote yes.
Would anyone else care to speak to Article 5? Someone want to call the question?
Move the question.
We have a second? Okay, Article 5, as written, will go to the warrant. Article 6. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 5. Do we have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Article 6, Bob Mitchell, School Board, Swansea.
The MDEA is currently on a contract that expired in June of 2015. This one-year contract provides increases to nurses' pay at competitive salaries, closes off step rate employees, establishes a career rate for teachers at the top of the scale, eliminates the 6th course stipend, changes the insurance driver and increases the teacher's insurance contribution to 18%, and eliminates the insurance pool. I know that's on the back side here. It reduces the longevity pool by $10,000. It increases entry-level salaries, and it smooths increases between steps. The school board supports this, and the Budget Committee supports this.
Would anyone care to speak to Article 6? Pat Borey.
We've got two people listed.
Okay.
Pat Borey, Swansea, and then Deb Gove from Swansea, who's a non-voter.
Okay.
Thank you. Pat Borey, Swansea. Just a clarification, I believe that the contract expired on June 30th, 2016, not 2015. So they have been without a contract now for 2 years. This is a one-year contract. It's a fair contract. I'd like to point out a few of the issues with the contract so that you understand what you're voting for. There are 157 teachers. They have raised, in the proposed contract, the entry level for new teachers coming in. That's a good thing. We need new qualified staff. Almost everyone else, the way I looked at it, would receive at least a $2,000 pay increase. That's a reasonable increase. They have lowered the longevity program, which is a program probably about 30 to 33 of your 157 teachers belong to or qualify for. It starts with your 15th year of employment with the district, and based on points, you receive a bonus for being in the school district beyond those years. The proposed contract calls for anywhere between $1,200 and $6,000 as a bonus for longevity. I would have liked to have seen this fund be utilized as a bonus for teachers who excel in the classroom so that it's fair among all 157 of the teachers, but that's not the way it's proposed. The teachers receive 13 days of leave. Of that, if they don't use them, they can carry over up to 110 days throughout their teaching career, and at time of retirement can receive up to $35,000 in their retirement. Teachers also receive $20 if in fact they give up their prep period and help out and teach a class where a teacher is unable to be in school that day. So over and above their regular salary, they are paid extra to fill in for someone. This is not done in the corporate world. I'm going to say that this is a really fair contract based on the last two that were proposed to the voters. But there was an issue, and there is still an existing issue, with the so-called healthcare pool. And back in June of 2016, the school board elected to give back to the teachers $232,000 towards their insurance out of this pool, even though their contract had expired.
Need to wrap it up, Pat.
They now are in court over $350,000. The district believes it belongs to them. The teachers believe it belongs to them. It can only be used for health care, But I think if the teachers withdrew any complaint on this $350,000, they would have an awesome expenditure of expectancy, of having this contract pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Would anyone else care to speak to Article 6? Debbie Gove is a resident of Swansea, but is not a registered voter. I'd ask for an approval. Yeah, not yet. Ask for a motion from someone and a second to give her the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
All in
Thank
favor? Opposed? Have at it.
Thank you very much, folks. I am back in the district. Previously, I lived here for about 15 years, moved out of district with my family, and I am currently back. However, during that time, I have been a teacher in the district for 30 years. Yikes. I don't want to admit that to you. And I just wanted to say I've been a part of this negotiation process for the last 2 times. And I believe that the teams have reached a fair and equitable agreement. No one got everything they wanted. Nobody's completely happy. We both had to do, I know on our side, we had to do some convincing, and I am sure the school board needs to do some convincing as well. I hope that you as a public can support this contract and help us move forward. It lays the groundwork for more work to be done as far as contracts, and I think that is something that both teams are willing to do. I also, at this time, because you gave me a moment, just want to express my support and appreciation to all the district officials, administrative staff, boards, for all of your work trying to accommodate the needs of students, of staff, of buildings, and all of the public. There are a lot of people trying to get their fingers on the button and want it their way, and it's good to see that everyone's doing the best they can for students. So thank you, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Debbie. Anyone else care to speak to Article 6? Dan?
Thank you, Moderator. Dan Kaufman of Swansea, Budget Committee member. Our Budget Committee voted to support this contract in its current form 1 year. Just want to reiterate that to folks. It's easy to lose sight of that. But I don't often get a chance to speak to a lot of teachers and administrators or board at the same time. So I just want to share my expectations. One, I'm going to vote for this contract. That normally doesn't happen because I'm not thrilled with how they end up. But I'm going to vote for it because, one, it is a 1-year commitment or agreement. My expectations for the ones going forward, however, I'll tell you the sticking points I personally have so that my fellow townspeople know where I stand. And if you have questions on that, bring them to me and I'll share them with our budget committee. Things I don't like. I don't like guaranteed raises without performance clauses that are aggressive, okay? I don't get money if my business doesn't perform, and we all should be that way. We should move to get contracts along that. I know it hasn't been that way for decades, but let's try to get a little more progressive in the education world, please. I'm begging you. Secondly, by virtue of most contracts, and I perceive this to be similar, if we have a change in workforce or a need to adjust headcount, the way that things are currently written is that we reward seniority purely and we hack, if you want to call it, the last in. The last in people are the first out. The ones that we ironically are given a pay improvement to in this contract. I support the pay improvement for the younger folks, younger in experience. Doesn't necessarily equate to younger in age, I hope you understand. But I support that. But it's quite a dichotomy when you say, I'm going to give the folks at the bottom end of the scale a raise, but they're also going to be the first people out if our enrollment continues to decline as it has over the last 10 years. I'd love for that not to be the case, but it is the case. So please work or endeavor to, in this next contract that I hope is 3 years this next time, fix those items. Those are 3 things that are really big for me. Lastly, aside from this specific contract, but it's always brought up, if you are someone that is fighting the leftover money from the prior contract, give it up, please. Give it up, please. Our prior boards and body voted to give this money to the association. We made a bad deal, and we need to move past it. Would I rather have $300,000 split between all of us? Sure, but you know what I'm going to do with that? Maybe buy a bottle of water. Okay? Give it to this organization, and let's stop spending attorney's fees. Please. I'm all for supporting this guy's family. Let's stop. All right? Enough. Please, I'm begging you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Wayne?
Wayne Lacoste, Swansea resident, school budget committee member, and parent. So I have, just more of a general statement. I personally support this article. It's no reflection of the two bodies that we have here. I'm 12-year resident, Swansea, 2-year budget committee member, and I have a 3rd year coming. So I think that all of our towns are dealing with the irresponsibilities of the past bodies, okay? Not attacking anybody individually, but we have buildings that were constructed in the 80s for 5 years, okay? The one point that I want to make is you look at these vacated seats that we have here, these empty chairs. There was strength in numbers here today. These people came with an agenda on Article 8, and I applaud them for that. But my point is to all of the residents, we need to, and this is confusing stuff, I'll admit that. We need to urge all of our Swansea residents, our friends and our neighbors, to understand and come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Anyone else care to speak to Article 6? We have a motion to move the question in a second. All in favor? Opposed? Article 6. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 6. Do we have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Article 6 moves to the ballot. Article 7, Lisa Stedman from the school board and the town of Troy will speak to Article 7.
Speaking on behalf of the school board, I want to say that we support the 2-year contract that we've come about with the MESA union. We worked really hard on it. We stayed on target with our budget goals for this contract. We want to give these hardworking employees an appropriate wage for the work that they're doing. And so in that vein, we have increased wages for the incoming employees, the paraprofessionals that are just starting out. And also, if you want to see the full detail of this contract and all of the others, it's available on the website. You'll be able to review all of the detail before it goes straight to the ballot. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Wayne, did you want to?
The Budget Committee does not support this article, primarily because we received this contract the Tuesday before our Thursday public hearing and didn't get a chance to go through it. And in the past, this district has been, I'll say, burned by not scrutinizing something like this. These contracts are put in place, and there's a lot more permanency to these contracts than people realize. And the costs are not only for the years listed, but they're recurring. So we really needed to put give some scrutiny to that, and we didn't have an opportunity to do that. So we do not support this.
Would anyone? Well, let's give people an opportunity. There might be somebody who wants to speak to it. We'll give Josh a call and ask him to keep it open for you. I do have a little latitude when it comes to that. Article 7, anyone care to speak to it?
Hi, Stephanie again. The pairs, which is the majority of this, do an amazing job, and I think that they work with the hardest kids that we have in our buildings, the hardest, on a day-to-day basis, and I think that they do deserve, and this is well deserved by them, so I just want to put that out there of how much they work with the hardest kids that we have every day. And you know what? They love it, and they come in every day to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Oh, we've got a couple people.
She's not going to talk with me. Melissa Alexander. I am a Swansea resident and also president of the Support Staff Association. I just want to talk a little bit about who these employees are. So for the most part, they are the paraprofessionals. They work with the neediest, the most challenging, the toughest kids, some of our lowest kids, kids who may not be able to come into these public buildings if they weren't here. They come in every day for the most part, 90% of the time at least, more, with a smile on their face. Sometimes they go through things in a day that no one here would want to go through, but they come back, they love these children, and they work hard with them. We do have a problem hiring people at the rate that our current salaries are set. I think Lisa Witt can attest to that. She's had people turn down positions because they don't make enough to put food on their own tables. So that's one of the things we did address in this new contract. I think it's important to realize, and I hear a couple people talk about that's not how they do it in the business world. And I want to thank Lisa Witt for bringing someone to us recently who talked about what the difference is between how things operate in the business world and how things operate in a school. In a business, you're producing a product or a service, and if it isn't of a certain quality, you don't accept it, you reject it, or you turn it away. That is not what happens in any one of our school buildings. Everything that walks through that door is educated, is loved, and is treated the same way. And that's what we do here every day. So I hope that you will support us and support Article 7.
Jennifer Burrows. I'm an administrative assistant here and a taxpayer. I just want to piggyback on what Melissa said, that these paras are definitely underpaid. There is a hard, we are having difficulties getting new paras to come work for our district because of the pay mostly. I do want to restate that to go off of Mr. Kaufman's I don't know if you'd call it an issue or a belief, that finding a better way to reward people versus just giving everybody a raise across the board is something that I can totally understand the point of view. But when you look at it, like we had this gentleman come in and speak to us, and he had the funny story about blueberries and ice cream, and a lot of us in the room have heard him talk this last week. When you get a bad shipment in a business, you're able to send it back and say, no, this doesn't meet my standards. But here every day, the paras come to work for what they get paid, and nobody can say, well, this kid, you didn't feed him this morning, so he's not really ready to learn, so we're gonna have to send him back home. We all keep going every day and helping these children the best we can. And this group of people that MESA falls under are one of our lowest paid people, and they most days do the most work for the kids in our district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erin White, Town of Troy. I think everyone's spoken really well about what this particular staff group, along with everyone else in the schools, goes through every day. The climate has changed in our world, folks, and so have our children, and so have their needs every time that they enter that school. We talk about competing with other districts and what we can build into our plans for the future in order to adapt to that. We have a lot of other districts nearby that, let's face it, we measure ourselves against, whether that's fair or not. And if we talk about wanting to compete at a higher standard, then it starts with the people that we have in our buildings ready to welcome and teach our children every day. So let's raise the rate a little bit so we can compete for the cream of the crop and get them in our schools and keep them, rather than them leaving for the next thing that comes along that better supports their family and their needs. And I would also encourage, I understand and respect that the Budget Committee did not have enough time for this. I hope that in future contracts that perhaps that would go differently, but I do know that the Budget Committee is meeting after this to revisit how they stand on articles, and I hope that they would reconsider now that they've had more time to put their support behind this.
Thank you.
DJ, Town of Troy. The way I took the conversation earlier from what Dan was saying at a business point of view, I don't think he was talking about the students, discarding the students. I think he was talking on the quality of teaching in the schools. Okay, we have certain teachers in the school district that do not perform well. I think that's what he was trying to get across this last year of performance of the teachers, not the students. So we're just wondering, we just don't want our students to suffer at the hands of quote unquote terrible teachers. They just come here because I'm just going to come here, just going to teach. I have tenure. Well, tenure, I wish we could just abolish that. That's my personal opinion. Because that just makes teachers lazy and lackadaisical. But I just want to clarify, he wasn't talking about the students, he was clarifying teaching. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have one more. I suspect she'll have something to say about the last comment.
Hi, I'm Michelle from Swansea. I never expected to be up here talking. But what I'd like you people to do is come in and see the school. Come in and see what the paras like I do with these students. You would not believe your eyes. We work so hard. We love these kids. We put our heart and soul to everything that we do with these kids. And for me to go into an environment, I worked and was laid off. So I was making pretty good money. I'm now making, if I'm allowed to say so, $10 an hour to be a pair at the school. Babysitters make more than that. I'm not there to be a babysitter for a child. I'm there to help them with their education, help them be a better person. I hope that you will consider giving us a raise for this. I work my butt off, and I love these kids to death. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a motion to call the question. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 7 will move to the ballot as written. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Before we get to Article 9, I'd like to recognize a few people. First, Lillian Sutton, who stepped into the breach when our district clerk resigned in January. Didn't give Lillian a whole lot of time to get prepared and to meet with the people she needed to meet with, but she did a phenomenal job, and everything was as well organized as I've ever seen. Thank you, Lillian. Lillian, you can stand up. They can't see you. There you go. Oh, you were? Okay. And at the beginning, we had all the school board members and budget committee members introduce themselves, but there's a few of them who aren't going to be back next year. And they, along with their colleagues, have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into supporting our children and supporting our communities, because a good school system obviously helps develop a good community. I'd like to recognize from the school board, Bob Mitchell from Swansea and Phyllis Peterson, who worked tirelessly on your behalf. Come on, guys. I know you're standing up, Phyllis, but Bob, you can stand up. And from the Budget Committee, Wendy Martell and Kristen from Fitzwilliam and Kristen Goodenough from Swansea. Come on, guys. Oh, you can stand. Come on, you can do it. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Article 9. Anyone have anything they want to advise the board or committee about of a purely, I think we know what you're going to say, Pat. I'm just guessing. You're going to applaud them for all the work they've done and how much you appreciate their effort as a former member.
I am going to applaud them. But I'd like to focus in on one particular employee of the SAU 93, our business manager, who has been in place for over 7 years as business manager, is on administrative leave for the past 2 months. It seems as if there were going to be charges brought against this business manager would have
Pat.
been done so.
Pat, I need to rule it out of
Okay.
order. I apologize.
So I'll redirect what I was going to say. This business manager was also,
Pat, we need to cease this discussion of this particular issue.
it's not a motion.
I'm saying we need to cease discussion of this particular issue. It has nothing to do with our meeting. Anyone else?
I'll take a stab at it. Woohoo! I'd like to make a motion that this board send a message of thanks for her years of service to Jane Fortson.
Anyone care to second that? Second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, yes, ma'am.
I have one question. Have the district hired a firm to do some of the work that our business administrator did? I would like to know the firm.
Lisa?
Yes, we have contracted with Municipal Resources Incorporated, and they have provided a consultant by the name of David Jack.
Thank you. I also would like to know, how much is this costing the district over and above what you have we have in our current budget?
The term of the contract is $95 per hour. I don't, at this time, know how many hours off the top of my head we've had him here.
And where are we finding the money to pay this firm?
I think that's a matter for the school board. You're welcome to come to one of their meetings and address them at that, but it doesn't pertain to our meeting today. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bursar.
Doug Bursaw, Budget Committee, Richmond. I think pretty much everyone in the room today has heard numerous times how we need a long-range capital improvements plan. So since these article is to listen to opinions of a purely advisory nature, I would like to move that we advise the school board to get a capital improvements plan committee and a long-range plan committee for the district in place and functioning on a regular basis.
Thank you, Doug. We have a motion and a second to advise the board, as Mr. Bursaw so eloquently expressed. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? I think they heard you all meeting. I think they heard you. Anything else? Then we'll take we have a motion to recess to the March 13th meeting. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. So all the warrant articles will pass to the warrant as amended or as written. And as everyone said before, thank you very much for coming.